Samsung and Google have had a weird relationship ever since Samsung became the dominant Android smartphone maker. They should, in theory, be each other's biggest allies, but there's always been a lot of disagreement between the two. With the Pixel and the Galaxy S8 though, these disagreements have reached an unprecedented level. I'm Martin from TechAltar, you're watching the 18th episode of the Story Behind series, and this is War. At first glance, the Galaxy S8 looks like a fantastic Android flagship. It has a beautiful design, a great screen, a good camera, and so on. Google should be proud to have hardware partners as competent as this making phones for the Android platform. At the same time, Android is better than ever too. Even the stock versions look great now, the app selection is top-notch, and performance is better than ever as well. Samsung should be happy to get all of this for free. One would almost expect these companies to have a symbiotic relationship as strong partners that complement each other. Great hardware and great software should, after all, go together like peanut butter and jelly. And while this might have been true a few years ago, it certainly isn't true today. Check this out. Let's take a look at the hottest new tech out there. Starting with Android flagships, Google has one called the Pixel and Samsung has the S8. How about VR headsets? Google has Daydream VR and Samsung has Gear VR. Now, smartwatches. Google has the Android Wear platform while Samsung keeps developing its own Tizen. TVs, the same thing. For smart home, Google has the Google Home and the Google Wi-Fi, while Samsung has SmartThings and the new Samsung Connect Home. When it comes to AI-powered personal assistants, Google has the Google Assistant, while Samsung recently came out with its own assistant called Bixby. And finally, both are trying to push Android apps into a computer-like environment. Google brings those apps to Chromebooks, while Samsung has just announced DeX, which allows the S8 to connect to a monitor and a keyboard to act like a PC. Surely they do still rely on each other as partners in some cases, but it looks more and more like they're also fierce competitors in all the areas that matter. And this becomes even more clear when you look deeper, because whenever they get the chance, they choose to not support each other. Let's start with Gear VR. Samsung could just build its own headset based on Daydream, but instead it chose to partner with Oculus, the same Oculus that is owned by Facebook, the same Facebook that wants to take the video and especially the VR video crown from Google's YouTube, all while also being Google's biggest rival when it comes to online advertising, Google's core business. Not exactly a friendly move from Samsung. Another strange partnership is that between Samsung and Microsoft. First, Microsoft's apps, such as Office, which are direct competitors to Google's own apps, come pre-installed on the regular S8. Then the companies even created a Microsoft edition of the phone that comes with even deeper Microsoft integration and is sold in Microsoft stores. And finally, DeX, which very closely imitates Microsoft's own Continuum, actually has those very apps optimized by Microsoft for the big screen experience. Remember, these apps come straight from Google's biggest rival in the productivity space. Again, not exactly a friendly move, and when Samsung doesn't partner with the enemy, it fights all of Google's ambitions to create new platforms such as Android Wear, TV, and Home by developing its own competing platform. Surely these two companies would be much stronger together and could take on competitors like Apple and Amazon far more efficiently as allies. But it seems like Samsung would rather have a smaller business without having to rely on Google. And this, in turn, has meant that without Samsung's support, none of Google's own efforts have really taken off so far. At the same time, Google is no saint either. I could even argue that Google's acquisition of Motorola might have been the first real attack against this Google-Samsung partnership. Sure, Google would love you and their manufacturing partners to believe that they bought Motorola mainly for their patents and that they ran it as a separate business without prioritizing it in any way. But come on, Motorola was a major competitor of Samsung in at least a few markets, and this acquisition surely sounded like no fun to Samsung. And neither did the Pixel, which is a fully fledged Android flagship and as such nothing but a direct attack against Samsung's crown jewel, the S8. Sure, Google has always had the Nexus line, but while those phones were positioned as reference hardware for developers, this one is made to sell to the same consumers who would have probably bought a Samsung flagship otherwise. The Google Assistant has also launched exclusively on the Pixel at first, which rightfully upset its manufacturing partners. We already know that Samsung developed Bixby as their competitor, but even Huawei, the second biggest Android maker, chose to put Alexa on their latest flagships instead of giving Google Assistant any room to shine. Clearly, there is no love between those companies when it comes to assistants either. And things like Google Wi-Fi or the Google Home speaker thingy are also markets where Google could have just had hardware straight from its manufacturing partners, or at least opened the platform to them. But instead, so far it decided to keep everything to itself. So why is all of this happening? Why don't Samsung and Google just work together as good partners? I think it is because both companies have reached a sort of plateau in their own businesses. Google is already the king of mobile OSs, search and whatnot, and Samsung too is already the king of phone hardware. The way to move on from here is to own the next big product category. Samsung doesn't just want to create dumb hardware for Google to invent an AI-powered future on. It wants to own that future itself. And Google knows it can't trust Samsung to stay a silent and willing partner, so it wants to create its own hardware so it doesn't have to rely on that of a competitor. In both cases, however, the result is the same. They both strive for vertical integration, meaning that both companies want to own the hardware, the software, and the services for the next big category. They are both approaching this from opposite ends though. Google is leveraging its software dominance and their online services, which most people can't live without, to convince people to buy their hardware. Samsung, on the other hand, is using the fact that they can push their software and services through the hundreds of millions of devices they sell across one of the world's most advanced sales networks to start building its own software and services platform. The end goal, in both cases, is the same though, to own as much of the business as possible. Sure, they both still partner with companies, like how Samsung got all friendly with Microsoft and Facebook, or how Google keeps supporting hardware partners like LG and HTC, but that is because none of those partners are big enough to challenge this vertical integration anytime soon. HTC isn't going to come out with an AI that is smarter than Google's anytime soon, the same way that Microsoft and Facebook won't start selling phones in the hundreds of millions either. They are all far away from vertical integration. Samsung and Google, however, both seem to have what it takes, so they will have to fight it out and see who will get there first. And this means war. So what do you think? Did my analysis make sense, or did I miss something hugely important? Let me know in the comments below or tweet it at me at TechAltar. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and follow me on my social media channels. I'm TechAltar pretty much everywhere, and I upload a ton of cool behind the scenes sort of stuff there. If you want to see more from the Story Behind series, where I take a look at the tech trends that nobody else seems to cover, then my previous episodes are somewhere here, and my future ones will come straight into your inbox if you hit that subscribe button, and especially the bell button next to the subscribe button for notifications. You need those notifications in your life, and I'll see you in the next one.